back to the Independent Thinking Online Children's Book Festival that we've been running in the build-up to this weekend, and then over the course of this weekend in partnership with Sue Atkins Book Club, which has allowed me to meet so many wonderful authors, talk about all sorts of things, all sorts of books for children, books about children, books for parents, books for teachers, covering all sorts of different really interesting topics that was something important to say ultimately about happy children, children who can learn, children who are with good well-being. And yeah, right at the heart of well-being is making sure that what children eat is, and this is my PDF version of it because my actual hard copy is somewhere in a customs warehouse in Rotterdam at the moment, don't ask, is this book, How Food Shapes Your Child by Louise Mercieca. And I'm just really delighted that she's here to join us and tell us a little bit about her background and how she came to be writing the book and what sort of book it is. So Louise, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here with the wonderful group of Sue's authors. As you say, it's a real eclectic mix, isn't it? And it's great to be part of it.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you came to this point.
So I used to be a personal trainer, so I'm a running coach. So I did a lot of working with people on obviously their physical health. Nearly all of my clients didn't fully understand nutrition and the link between, they think they could just do some exercise and it would undo any damage that they do the rest of the time. You know, an hour a week and anything else is fair game. So yeah, I'm afraid it doesn't work like that. It doesn't kind of work like that. So I kept getting asked lots of different questions about how can I do this really quickly and how can I want to be ready for this occasion, and it was like, the body kind of doesn't work like that. So I wanted to study nutrition more than you do when you're a PT. So I went away, studied nutritional science and became a nutritional therapist, worked with one-to-one clients on the more holistic side of nutrition. As if, you know, you can't just run for an hour and do what you like the rest of the time. And really, it's fascinating the link between not only what we do when we're young, but what we do now, how that impacts on our health in the future. We kind of can't just get away with it. Whatever we do will catch up with us at some point. And it's kind of understanding that, you know, you may say, oh, I've got a fast metabolism, I can eat what I like and I can exercise and eat what I like. There are things going on internally that we can't necessarily always see on the outside. So food has a much more influential role than what we sometimes associate it with, that we think it's to do with our weight or how we look, much, much more than that. So it's kind of understanding that food impacts on every cell in the body. And that means every movement, of course, but also every decision and every emotion. And when you consider that, you really then should start to think about what you actually put in, you know, in terms of food. Now, I accidentally fell into children's nutrition. It was never a plan as a career. It was 3 years ago when my little boy was 4 and he was due to start school. And I just saw a course online with the Health Science Academy for Children for Brain Development, Nutrition for Children's Brain Development. I thought, I'll have a bit of that because he's starting school. I never saw it as shaping my career. But the more I studied nutrition, formative nutrition, and how it shapes really our entire life, there are certain windows within childhood that beyond which we kind of can't do anything to go back to that stage. So particularly sort of 0 to 2 and 0 to 3 in terms of brain development stages, nutrition is hugely influential. And sometimes we can't get the pathways and connections if they haven't been in place then. They're going to struggle for the rest of the time to kind of be catching up. And so the more I sort of studied that, the more fascinating it became. And as soon as I'd finished the course and passed the course, day of the last exam, I thought, I'm going to write a book. And so I sat down with a load of post-it notes and I was like, brain, veggies, health, science. And I just had this chaos in the office for 6 weeks. And at the end of 6 weeks, I had a book. And then after 2 months after finishing the course, it was the book launch party. So it was I'm a very impatient person, and if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, and it's going to happen. So then the book was launched, and it was nice to sort of have a physical book and to have some involvement from my little boy. He was 4 at the time. He helped to design the characters. I wanted it to be engaging for children as well as the science for grown-ups. And so I don't know how well you can see them, but we have a team of characters in there. And they kind of pop up throughout the book to make it your very young children can engage with it in terms of looking for those and picking up things, because no matter how young they are, they can be involved in their food journey. And so I wanted it to be colourful and playful and enticing for children. But then so many things happened off the back of it that I hadn't planned, or it was all this career direction that just rolled out. So a nanny in Bermuda bought my book, really liked it, got in touch with me and said, I want you to be a keynote speaker. I'm going to put an event on in London and come over to London so that you can be my speaker. And it was like, oh, right, okay. So nannies from all over the world, an event in London, 2 days, and I was a keynote speaker. I'd never planned on being a keynote speaker, but I like to talk, so that worked quite well. I've done a few following that with other speaking events. And then obviously the last year they've all been online, but before that it was nice to go into the actual world and see people. So lots of talking, because I underestimated the importance of formative nutrition and how much it shapes everything. Academically, there's links, there's social links, there's emotional links, there's links with mental health, there's obviously links with physical health, and there's lots of physical health sort of statistics that we can look at when we look at statistics of the future. By 2030 this, by 2040 this. Those statistics are the children of today. So when we're predicting health trends, which are nearly always negative, we're actually talking about the children of today. And so I kind of had this really scary thing that stuck in my mind from my training, that the generation of children currently are not going to live, or not expected to live as long as the previous generation. Oh. And that is all through lifestyle. I won't say choices, because I feel very strongly that small children don't have a choice in their food. They don't have a voice. What shapes their palate development is food that's given to them. And that's where I want to make sure that people understand the very broad sort of influence that food has. We're not just filling a child up, we're shaping a child, hence the title of the book, How Food Shapes Your Child.
There are societal issues as well. I know one of the books we wrote is called The Working Class, and it's looked at what goes on. You can't just say we give everybody the same opportunity and some people will rise and some people won't. And nutrition was part of it. And we know that the food that's least good for your brain and your development and your health is the stuff that's most readily available and the cheapest. And
unfortunately,
with time and money or both, that's what you're going to do. That's what you're going to do. And you talk about formative nutrition. I want to come back to that, because it's so important, especially if we're working with teachers as well, and we look at school dinners, lunchbox. I made a note of that. But I just want to know, just from what you said right at the very beginning, just very quickly, how you make sure you are not known as Miss Party Pooper and Miss Spoil Sport, because what you're saying is you need to actually bear in mind, think about what you eat, as opposed to eat what you like and then go for a run, which I must say is more my approach to to things. How do you spin it into a positive? And certainly your book, even though I've only got the PDF version of it currently, is so beautifully put together. The colors, the pictures, the typography, everything is it's a really positive book. It's not a mustn't sort of book. So
no.
How do you achieve that balance?
That's a really good point, because nutrition in the media is often, it's very contradictory, and it's often very sort of scaremongering, and it also has a real culture of blame, especially around obesity. And I still work with grown-ups. I'm not solely down the road of early years, and I still work with grown-ups, and the hang-up they have about how they're made to feel about what they eat and their health and their weight, because of how nutrition and food is portrayed in the media. And it often can feel, as a nutrition person, that people are scared of you or don't want to engage with you because they think you're going to be quite preachy, they think you're going to be judgy, they think you're, holier than thou with your own approach to food. And first thing I always say to people when I do webinars or talks or writing is that actually we need to remove all elements of blame on the individual. Because if we look at the food landscape changes in the last 40 years, and the gradual increase and progressive increase, so that nobody's really noticed the significant change in the food industry. And at the same time, there's been a parallel, significant, but very slow decline in health. Now, if we suddenly went, as was in the programme on BBC One recently about ultra-processed foods, if we suddenly switched to an 80% ultra-processed food diet, as was the doctor in the programme, we would feel all of those things in an accelerated time period, and we would feel rubbish. But because they've been drip fed into society over the last however many, 4 decades, we haven't noticed. We've just been feeling more rubbish. People just accept that they feel a bit, yeah, well, of course I ache. Of course I'm tired. Of course, I'm busy. That's just how you feel. People accept that and they live with that because the changes have been so drastic. So my approach is very much let's not blame ourselves because we are not making these choices. These choices are being made for us. If we are to make a healthy choice, we have to go out of our way. Whereas the other options are all the things that are readily available. So, of course, if you're hungry, if you're tired, if you're stressed, which are all drivers for hedonic hunger, which is normally when you're in a shop, you're driven by that rather than physiological hunger, you're going to go for what's available. There's very few people that would go past all of that and find the dried apricots. They would not do that because everything is available to us. And that's for many reasons, the huge problem. We obviously have the health and wealth divide, and that is growing because convenient food, as in we're just in a hurry, we just need to get something, 3 times more expensive to buy something healthy than something that is not healthy. Obviously, you can buy things healthy, but you have to pack them, prepare them, do things with them, cook them, and then it's cheaper. But we're in a hurry, and we're not necessarily understanding what to do with pulses and things, when we're in a hurry. They don't look appealing. They can be, but they don't look it on the shelves, and that's a huge problem. But I don't see a massive step change in industry. One of my roles, because I have many, I'm a food judge for the Nourish Awards, and I have been for 3 years. And this year we launched the Children's Awards, and I did a talk at the Do last year virtually, of course, to food manufacturers, a plea to food manufacturers to make a change, because unless the big names do, the only ones that are doing it, and there's many of them and they're wonderful, and I spent a lovely day judging them this week, but they are small producers, they are expensive, they are a premium price, and the only people that will buy them will be the ones who are already making conscious health decisions and can afford to. And unfortunately, that is just going to mean the health and wealth divide gets even bigger.
What about school dinners then, school lunches? I know that was all the thing when Jamie did his thing and we got rid of turkey Twizzlers, which I quite like them, but no. So do you see changes there? Are schools and
in primary, not in secondary? And I think primary, certainly where I am, I know the menus, and in the district that I'm in, I know it's where the meat comes from, where the veg comes from, the bread is made. There are some anomalies and things that people assume are healthy, like yogurts, and that really annoys me. So there are still things in there that would cause me to grimace. But on the whole, the basics of meat, veg, and sort of carbs, they're not overly processed. That's as food should be. So that's considering this may be some children's main meal of the day and potentially only meal of the day in some areas. That is for primary, I think a lot better than it was 20 years ago. But secondary, and I luckily don't have a child in secondary yet, but then it's kind of more freezer rubbish, I would describe it as, the sort of beige trays of things. And of course, at that age, they're independent with their decisions and their food purchasing. So there's peer pressure. You don't want to be the one having kale and falafel when everyone else is having chips. So, it's harder, I think, for secondary, but I can't speak for all districts with primary, but I do think Jamie had a big role to play in making some improvements there.
The falafel bullying, I can see it now. Yeah. So lead us into your book then. We've got 7 minutes left, something like that. Okay, cool. So
it's
informative nutrition is a phrase that's going to stay with me as well. This idea that what we eat builds brains. And so schools have got it. Schools, I would say, teachers are neural architects. Teachers build brains. They construct brains, but the bricks they're building the brains out of are made of food, and I sort of keep that connection there. So sorry, go on about your book.
No, absolutely. I mean, I have a whole section here on building a brain, and my designer was very squeamish about doing this because she didn't like, some people don't like brains. She didn't like drawing it, but I said, no, I want a brain in that. So she had to draw me a brain. And For teachers, certainly, I think within schools, often there can be an assumption made about a child, a bit fidgety, a bit restless, a bit disruptive. And then there's a kind of a road that you may go down with the child to look for why that might be the case. And often that could even lead to an ADHD diagnosis or something like that. Very few times have I ever seen anyone actually think, well, what do they eat? You know, and that would actually have a huge impact, because what I've done in the book on these pages is not all science, there's some fun and there's lots of recipes in here as well, is go through what actually makes up a brain. And the brain is fascinating. I could talk for another day, but I know we're short for time. But what I've got on these tables are actually really easy to see, nutrients that help children to concentrate, learn, and remember. So for teachers, if we know this, and if we can factor in a menu, a breakfast club, these nutrients so that they are covered, or even a fact sheet so that parents know that these things help their children. The child who's fidgety, disruptive, a bit annoying perhaps in class, could simply be deficient in some nutrients, could not be having enough essential fatty acids, could be having too much sugar, so his blood sugar is going up and down, therefore so is his mood, because the two are linked, and he's, as we all feel when that happens, irritable, fidgety, restless. So nutrition plays a huge role in not only building the brain, like for example, 40% of the brain is fat, which is why we need to eat fat. You know, don't be scared of fat, which the diet industry's done a great job of making everyone scared of fat, but we need it. But also it continues to have even as grown-ups, it continues to have an impact on our decision-making, on our ability to think, learn, and remember. And if we consider a child who is missing something in their diet, is deficient in, say, iodine, is deficient in essential fatty acids, it has an automatic impact on their ability to learn, concentrate, and remember. So they get switched off because they're struggling. They may get fidgety and disruptive because they're disengaged, because it sounds simple, but they're just not doing this. And that's what nutrition does. It helps things to join, it helps connections to be formed, it helps the pathways to be formed. And a child can be really struggling and then labelled. And this can happen from an early age. And then that label is with them. And then they think, well, I can't do that because I've got this, or, you know, and then it's kind of not a case of stopping trying, but feeling that they're labelled. And I think we really downplay the importance that nutrition has in shaping children's patterns of behaviour, physical and mental health development. So that's what I've tried to do with the book.
Yeah, and you do, I can imagine children or teachers in the school using those pages and creating an assembly for the parents. Again, not about blaming and shaming. And
no.
You know, for me to concentrate, this food is good. For me to focus, food is good. You also introduced quite early on in the book, which is rare for any book about food and children, epigenetics. And I'm currently in Rotterdam, and I know there are studies here about the famine that went on after the war.
Yes, fascinating. 2 generations later.
Yeah. So the decisions we are making for ourselves and for our children now have a long-term generational impact.
Yeah, absolutely. I do a lot of talks on this because I find it fascinating, and I know that we're running out of time, but I say what we eat shapes not only our health, but our child's health and our grandchild's health. And we don't make that link enough. But if we look at generational health decline, we can certainly see it's already having an impact.
Wow. Because I'm thinking about my grandparents. So they would eat healthily. They would grow their own food. They would after the war, they didn't eat an awful lot, but what they did was homegrown health. There wasn't anything processed in their diet. So, which sort of implies that we're running out of that generation, if you like, who had a healthy diet, and there were going to be implications ahead. And what you said was quite shocking at the beginning, that we're going into a situation where our children going ahead of us are going to live shorter lives than we are.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we are living longer, but it's the quality of life as well. But this generation are expected to not outlive the length of time that we are perhaps expected to live. But also it's the quality of life. We may live longer, but we may have all sorts of conditions that we're living with. And we know that children are getting what used to be adult diseases like type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure and high cholesterol, just because we associate them as adult diseases. That's just because it used to take longer for the wear and tear to take place. Unfortunately, because of the way we live now, it's not taking as long. And I've seen 8-year-olds with type 2 diabetes.
Okay. And could you sum up the gut-brain connection in 30 seconds?
Oh gosh, my favourite subject. I think the easiest way to say it is always trust your gut, because it's a primal response. And the gut instinct is, again, underplayed. We need to trust it. We need to go with it. It's our first sort of defense mechanism. This will overthink and complicate and be analytical, and our heart will sort of be like, oh, well, it'll be okay. But the gut hasn't got that conscious thinking. It's just an instinct. So I would always go with the instinct. But yeah, coming back to the food affecting every cell in the body is kind of how I would sum up the gut-brain connection in the simplest way. We can't have an unhealthy gut without having an unhealthy every system in the body. So the gut health is really important.
Yeah.
And it makes us happy.
Happy guts. That's my nickname. We'll be from now when I go for a run. Thank you, Louise. That's fascinating. We could be here for hours talking about this. It's a lovely. I look forward to wresting it from the hands of the Dutch, seeing it properly. Loads of love. We didn't even touch on the recipes, which are so simple and straightforward, and they look really tasty. I must say, I didn't know you could do so much with an avocado.
Oh, loads.
Yeah, no. How can people, so, I mean, we've done the deal with the Roving Bookshop for this book festival, so people can sort of get the book that way. We're looking at getting them signed and everything, so the link is on the website. How can people get hold of you? What's your social media? What's your website, Louise?
Website is thehealthkick.co.uk, and that has everything about me and all the various bits and pieces that I do. On Twitter, Louise Mercieca 1, and on Instagram and Facebook as The Health Kick.
Okay, that's lovely. And I love the fact that you can come up with an idea for a book, and 6 months later you got a book, and then you got a book launch. I like the speed.
Oh, 2 months. 2 months.
I did wonder what food was available at the book launch. People didn't eat anything.
No, I know. Yes, I know you said about being the party people. I have had, when my child has gone to parties, the parents be quite scared of the buffet around me. So yeah, I do have that reputation.
There you go. Okay, thank you for the important work that you're doing. Thank you for that book. Thank you for being part of this. I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thank you. Cheers.